Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. This video is all about the latest version update coming to Dragalia Lost, with an emphasis on some of the fundamental changes it'll bring to the game, like alterations to basic weapon combos and the addition of a proper dodge roll mechanic. This update is a megaton, and there's much more to it, like skill sharing next week and an onslaught event type coming later in June. I'll cover skill sharing in my next video since that topic is complex enough to warrant an in-depth look. For today though, I really want to focus in on the other changes to Dragalia since I've seen such a wide range of opinions on them. Overall, I have to say I'm thrilled with how this version update will change basic weapon combos, reduce damage to AI adventurers, add invulnerability frames to dodge rolls, and reduce damage from high dragon trial opening blasts. I believe all of these changes will improve the new and casual player experience, and a few of them also have significant upside for heavily enfranchised players. One thing Dragalia Lost is guilty of from a design standpoint is that it often fights player intuition. The obvious thing to do in many cases is not the right thing to do, and this can confuse, frustrate, and leave behind lots of players without access to external resources like YouTube, Reddit, or Discord. For example, a lot of enfranchised players know it's better to farm rupees from void battles than from Avenue to Fortune. But why wouldn't the quest that exclusively drops lots of rupees not be the best place to earn them? Design decisions like these tend to create disparities between those with access to the esoteric game knowledge and those who try their best with what the game presents at face value. Another example is how many dragons are stronger when kept at a lower bond level. I believe that weapon combos were yet another case where what was optimal was very unintuitive. To briefly summarize the weapon combo changes, jumps are being removed from sword, dagger, and axe combos, wands and staves are being sped up, and blades are getting a damage change to their final hit. The biggest impact here is for swords and daggers because this means their optimal rotations will change. It's fine to reward players for an unusual discovery once in a while, and I wouldn't say everything should be completely obvious in any game, but weapon combos are part of the foundation of Dragalia Lost. The fact that the standard sword combo with a jump was a 10% or worse DPS loss compared to combos with 4 strikes meant a lot of players were unknowingly holding themselves back in a big way. I think it's good to have to do some research every now and then, but in this instance, I think this is a good change. Too often, I would see people mocking or complaining about pub sword users jumping, and it's not their fault. When we see that happening as often as we do, we have to recognize that it's the game, not the player. To help illustrate that, I'm sharing footage from 2 gameplay videos. The first is actually my very first clear of High Midgard Sormer back in January 2019. The second video is from a clear of Master High Midgard Sormer in December 2019, 12 months later. Notice how I was still jumping with my sword in the first video even 4 months after the game's launch. The other big difference you'll notice in my play patterns is how many more unnecessary movements I made as a beginner. With experience, you learn to plant yourself and try finish your combos if possible for the maximum SP gain. But as a beginner or casual player, especially if you don't know what's going to happen next in a fight, you tend to squirm around to try and stay alive. This is where the next big change of this version comes into play. Dodge rolls now grant iframes. This is probably my favorite gameplay change of the update because I think it offers something for veterans and newbies alike. The thing to recognize about rolling before this version update is that it's a mechanic with almost no upside. There's almost no point in rolling, and it's something players should phase out of their playstyle over time. This is because rolling is slower than running, meaning it's only ever really used properly for small positioning adjustments when you struggle too much to get your unit to walk via touch controls. Because rolling was never optimal, the most common time I'd see people repeatedly rolling was when they were new to the game or new to a fight, didn't know what to expect, and wanted to stay in motion out of fear that the boss move would hit them. After this change, those types of players will have a safety net without a affecting veteran players much at all because experienced players already know not to roll or move without a clear intent or purpose, since doing so only hurts your DPS uptime. But the upside to this change for veteran players is that this is yet another tool in their arsenal, since this mechanic is actually relevant now, meaning the overall skill ceiling for high-level play is actually enhanced, not lowered. Battles have always revolved around timing, whether that's in knowing how soon you must retreat to successfully dodge, or knowing when to cast your skill to iframe an enemy attack. Now there's an extra layer of strategic consideration. Do you cast a skill on cooldown and trust in your ability to roll through the next boss attack? Or do you play it safe and hold on to your skill because you're worried about using your roll at just the right time, or you may need a longer iframe than the roll animation provides? The on-the-fly, life and death decisions are going to make for exciting gameplay, and I'm not worried about the whole infinite iframes possibility with spamming roll. When you're rolling, you know what you're not doing? Attacking, using skills. There is a real, tangible downside. Not to mention, it's still a bit unclear on what types of marker attacks rolls will be able to dodge and which ones they won't be able to touch. If you've done much solo play in Dragalia Lost, you may notice the AI never really rolls. They always walk perfectly to the spot they want to stand on. If you do see an AI rolling, it's actually a special mechanic whereby they have a random chance to dodge an otherwise unavoidable attack. It's perhaps telling that the AI never even uses the ult mechanic at all, because if human players could walk in the precise way the AI does, there'd be pretty much no reason to roll ever. So, on the whole, I like the change to dodge rolls. And although it's more minor, I also like the iframes on aerial bracing and being able to automatically turn on bracing for AI teammates. In the rare circumstances where it was better to not do an aerial tech, it was pretty punishing to accidentally input one. For example, it used to sometimes be preferred to fall down after an HMS tornado hit you rather than doing an aerial tech and inadvertently eating an 8-way. And speaking of the AI, another controversial change in this version update is that the AI will take reduced damage. And I know what you're thinking, this is going to make Dragalia Lost easier than ever to solo, or that everyone is just going to auto-battle now because heavily enfranchised players were already moving in that direction. I think the thing we have to keep in mind is that the number of players who can actually clear endgame content is a tiny minority of the Dragalia Lost player base, and the number who can solo or auto endgame content is a minority of that minority. So while yes, Dragalia will become easier to take on alone, I think this won't change much for the people who could already do so before the update, except to make their runs more consistent, which ultimately just means saving some time, because there is no real cost for failed runs to begin with. And for those who couldn't solo content before, perhaps this update will give them the motivation to try, and to find enjoyment in the game through that means. One of the most frequent comments I see from less enfranchised players is that the AI in Dragalia Lost is bad. I still read complaints about adventure AI very often to this day, and I imagine the Dragalia dev team is in the same position. It's always things like, my brain-dead AI died, or if my AI would have moved out of the way, I would have won. People love to blame external factors for their own success or failure, and I don't begrudge anyone that. A lot of people also blame touch controls or failed inputs or their controller not working. You get the idea. The thing people don't realize is that so much of what the AI does depends on what the leader does, and furthermore, the game gives you the ability to swap units at any time. More often than not, it's the player, not the game in this case. Having said that, this is another scenario where you have to wonder if understanding how to manipulate AI behavior is just too unintuitive for most players or too exotic. If many people truly believe their AI are responsible for them losing, and it's really making them unhappy, then I see no issue with an AI buff. This seems like something with the potential to improve quality of life for a wide swath of players, and I guess the only fear with a change like this is how it may affect co-op play. I will admit that I am slightly worried about co-op's future. Lobbies for easier content are starting to dry up. IO rooms take longer to find, and I doubt anyone is checking easier difficulty void battles to say, help with speedruns for epithets. A lot of the game's previous co-op content is transitioning toward content you'd only ever touch in solo play for enfranchised players. We'll have to see just how much the AI damage reduction moves the needle. I think it's a good change, but we need to keep seeing fresh co-op fights like Omega 2 to use wings on. The other damage reduction that comes with this version update is that high dragon opening blast will now deal less damage. This I'm also totally fine with. I think it was about time this change happened, and to be honest, the purpose of these blasts was to initially pad out and gatekeep this content anyway. Players who want to cheese these trials can already do so with or without this change, and this just makes the trials more beginner friendly and allows people to use their favorite units for fun clears. If there is any real drawback here, it's definitely that some characters used to rely on the opening blast to fall to low HP like Fjorm or Gala Yuden. Now, you'll have to put in slightly more work to make this happen, perhaps taking some hits intentionally during the fight. Without knowing just how diminished the opening blasts are, it's tough to know what this looks like, but I hope other changes like Skillshare give these Crisis characters additional ways to reduce their own HP. And, well, I guess that's pretty much my take on this next version update. I've seen such a variety of opinions on this update that I'd love to read yours in the comments below. And if there's one change we can all come together and agree is positive, it's the upcoming Royal Regiment, a brand new tutorial for players who have just started playing Dragalia Lost, featuring Professor Knot. This looks like a great way to lead players through the many systems and mechanics on offer as part of the early game in Dragalia, and I'll definitely have to make an updated beginner's guide in the next few months accordingly. Otherwise, I think the change I'm personally most looking forward to is skill sharing, so expect a deep dive video on that soon. I know we'll get details next week, but the theory crafting around this has been fantastic, so I'd like to share my early thoughts based on what we know so far in the next couple of days. Alright. Well everyone, that is going to do it for this video. Thank you as always for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.